What if I told you that one of the biggest, most important companies on the planet was saved not in some fancy boardroom, but at a blackjack table in Las Vegas? It sounds crazy, right? Well, this is the story of how FedEx, down to its very last $5,000, faced certain doom, and how its founder decided to bet it all on a hand of cards. So, what on earth could make the CEO of a major company say something that reckless? That was Fred Smith's actual response when a COO found out he'd just gambled away the company's last few dollars. To really get how things got that desperate, we've got to go back to the very beginning. You see, the entire FedEx empire, this global giant, started as an idea that was considered so out there, so completely impossible, that it was basically laughed out of a Yale classroom. This wasn't just a business plan. It was a vision that the world, frankly, just wasn't ready for. Okay, so on one side, you've got this brilliant, revolutionary idea from 1965, a dedicated air and ground system using a central hub to deliver packages overnight, a total game changer. And on the other side, a legendary C grade from a professor who thought it was totally unfeasible. Now, Smith himself later admitted he couldn't remember the exact grade, but the message was clear. The so-called experts thought his idea was a non-starter. But a bad grade? That wasn't about to stop Fred Smith. His real education, the thing that forged his character, wasn't at Yale. It was in the jungles of Vietnam, where he served 2 tours with the Marines. He came back a decorated captain, battle-hardened and with a kind of resilience that you just can't teach. And that resilience was going to be absolutely critical for the business war he was about to fight. By 1971, he was ready. And he did not go in small. Smith put his own $4 million inheritance on the line and then raised a jaw-dropping $91 million in venture capital. Just let that sink in for a second. At the time, this was the most highly financed startup in U.S. history. With a war chest that massive, you'd think failure was impossible. But a perfect storm was brewing. The launch was huge, it was ambitious, but the reality on the ground was just brutal. The company started burning through that fortune at a terrifying rate, and it was getting pushed right to the edge by a global crisis nobody could have seen coming. So, on their very first night of operations, with 14 jets all fueled up and ready to go, Federal Express delivered a grand total of 186 packages. It was a disaster. Their whole model was built for huge volume, and that volume just wasn't there yet. And then came the knockout blow. The 1973 oil crisis hit, and jet fuel prices just went through the roof, quadrupling almost overnight. For a company that was nothing but a fleet of airplanes, this was a death spiral. Their single biggest expense just exploded, while their revenue was barely a trickle. The numbers were just grim. I mean, the company was losing $1 million every single month. And within just 2 years, they were already about $29 million in debt. You can bet investors were starting to panic. The dream was turning into a total nightmare. And this is where the crisis gets really personal. It got so bad, so desperate, that loyal FedEx pilots started using their own credit cards to buy fuel for the jets, just so they could complete their routes and get back home. This wasn't a problem on a spreadsheet anymore. This was a daily fight for survival, funded by the pure belief of the people on the front lines. And all of this brings us to the climax of the story. Every conventional option was gone. Smith made one last desperate plea for funding, which led to a final, soul-crushing rejection and an impulsive flight that would go down in corporate history. Just imagine the pressure. It's a Friday. You need $24,000 by Monday to pay the fuel bill, or your entire company, your dream, is grounded for good. And you have only $5,000 left in the bank. Smith makes this last-ditch pitch to the board of General Dynamics for a loan, and they say no. Flat out. It was over. Or was it? Instead of flying back to Memphis to tell everyone they'd failed, Smith took a little detour to Las Vegas. Now, this wasn't just a moment of madness. This was the only move left on the chessboard when the alternative was guaranteed failure. It was the business world's equivalent of a Hail Mary. But here's the kicker. This wasn't just some blind, hopeful gamble. Fred Smith was a skilled poker player. And some accounts say he wasn't just playing the cards, he was counting them, using the high-low system to get a small statistical edge. This completely reframes the whole thing, doesn't it? It wasn't just an act of pure desperation, it was an act of calculated strategy. The Marine was using every weapon in his arsenal, even if the battlefield was a casino table. By Monday morning, he had turned the company's last $5,000 into $27,000. He immediately wired the money back to Memphis. The $24,000 fuel bill got paid. The planes kept flying. He had bought his dream exactly one more week of life. Now, that blackjack win wasn't the ultimate solution, but it turned out to be something way more important. Smith himself called it an omen. It was a psychological victory, this jolt of pure, unbelievable momentum that convinced everyone, especially the investors, that this company simply refused to die. That single week, bought at a blackjack table, was the turning point. It gave Smith the breathing room and one heck of a story to go back to his investors and secure another $11 million. And from there, the momentum was just unstoppable. By 1976, FedEx finally turned a profit, and just 2 years after that, it launched a wildly successful IPO. The gamble paid off, big time. And the scale of that payoff, it's just staggering. Today, FedEx is a global empire worth over $60 billion, a pillar of modern commerce, all of it built on a foundation that was saved by a desperate all-or-nothing bet made with the company's last dime. And that is the unbelievable but absolutely true story of how a blackjack bet saved FedEx. It kind of leaves us with a wild question, doesn't it? When you're a pilot in a tailspin, you're headed for the ground and there's no way out. Is the logical choice to just brace for impact? Or is it to dive even faster, hoping against hope you can gain just enough airspeed to pull up seconds before you crash? It's something to think about. Thanks for joining us.